Hi everyone, welcome back to Sfdc Panther. This is Amit, and in this video we are going to talk about sharing rules. In our previous videos, we have talked about how to work with role hierarchy and OWD, which is organization wide default. So sharing rules are also we can say sharing rules are also used to open the access for a record on top of OWD and role hierarchy. So if we have some requirement where we are not able to achieve this using either OWD and role hierarchy, then we prefer using sharing rules. Sharing rules only works for the object if the OWD for that object is either private or public read only for any of the either default internal or default external settings. Why is that? Because if we have the OWD which is saying that public read write, that means that all the users in that Salesforce org already have access to the records, so we no need to worry about, or we no need to write any kind of sharing rules. What happens behind the scene when we create any sharing rules and those sharing rules execute to give the extra access to the record? It does create a record for the Salesforce share object, and share objects again only gets available for that object if OWD is either private or public read only for any of the settings, either default internal or default external. We will talk in deep about this share objects in our next video when we will talk about manual sharing and apex managed sharing. So these are the type of sharing rules. There are earlier we had only two types of sharing rule, which was owner based and criteria based. But in the recent release, we have got one more, which is guest user. Again, this is something to share the record with the guest user. Guest user can be of our either Salesforce community or that can be of our Salesforce site. And this is how we will be able to select. We will be seeing in the demo. Now, with the help of sharing rules, with whom we can share our record? This is an interview question as well. Interviewer can ask, can we share the record directly with the user with the help of a sharing rule? Then the answer is no. Directly we cannot share, but there is a workaround for that we will also see here. So we can share the records with public groups, roles and internal subordinates, roles internal and portal subordinates. Now let's quickly get our hands dirty. This is one place where I have logged in into my Salesforce environment as my system admin account here. I am inside sharing settings that we have left in our previous video. We have got private for both default internal and default external access. And these are the two users which we are using. The second user is the user which we are using to test our security settings. So here I'm logged in with the second user where we are working on an object called error log where we have only one record for now and we are testing that. Before we go ahead and actually start implementing sharing rules, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the roles for these two users. Earlier we made the role for our security control user at CEO. I'm going to change this, and I'm also going to change the role for my user which is Amit Singh. That is an admin user. So what I will do is I will change the role to none. I'm not specifying any role for now, and I'm also going to change the role to none for both of the users. Now what we will do is we are going to, if we come back here and refresh this page, this time with okay, let's see who is the owner of this record. Okay, the owner of this record is security control user. That is why we are able to see this record. Now let's quickly get back to our sharing settings. Here what we will do is we will try to create a new sharing rules over here. So by default you might see that the all object has been selected in the pick list. So what you can do is you can just search for your object which is error log, and then it is going to expand, it is going to show you the details for that selected object only. And this is also I will recommend for you to filter for your object which you are looking for, because instead of selecting all object as a picklist value and seeing all the details of all the objects, it not looking good. So instead of having that, just filter with your object and then see the details for that object itself. To create the sharing rules over here, you can just go to here, you can see error log. sharing rules, click on new here, and you will see that you have got a label. There is rule name, a valid description for that sharing rules, why you are creating that, and then you have got rule type, which we discussed. Either it can be based on a record, based on a criteria, or guest user. So we are going to see these two because we don't have any guest user as of now in our Salesforce org. And then if you see here with whom we can share, these are all the four options that we have. Okay, so first of all we will talk about based on criteria. So we have some sort of requirement where suppose that we have an object, or let's take that object as lead. We have an object called lead, and based in the lead we have a field, and that field is called, we can say, that field is called as region. That region contains APAC, EMEA, and some other regions as well. So what is the requirement? The requirement is whenever you are creating a lead in any of the region, the users who are dealing in that region should be able to see that lead, no matter what is the role for those users. So for that, if you make OWD as public read only, what will happen is all the users in that org will be able to see. But that is not what we want. What we want is whenever we create a lead in the region, suppose that we are creating a lead in the region APAC, it should only be visible to the users who are working for APAC region. For that, what we have to do is we have to create a sharing rule. Now, as we are working on that object called error log, so what we have to do is, let's quickly see in our error log, and we will create a we will create a field over here, and that field will be again a pickles field, which will say region APAC. So I'm going to create a pickles field over here. So this is my pickles field. I'm going to say APAC, EMEA, NA. These are the three regions that I have, and based on the regions, I'm going to I'm going to create my sharing rules to share the record with the users who are working on that particular region. Click on next, add that in the page layout and save it. Now we have got that field. Okay, for now what we are considering is the second user, which we have name as security control, is working on the region called APAC. So what business want is whenever an error log record which is getting created in the region called APAC, the user security control user must be able to see this record. Okay, that is what we are going to see over here, and we are going to create that. Let's quickly refresh this. And one more thing that we know that we wanted to share a record with the user, but if we get back to our sharing rules and see share with, there is no option called user. So how we can share that? For that, what we need to do is we need to go to groups. Sorry, just search for group here and go to public groups. As we know that here we have an option called public groups, so we can create a public group over here. I will name that as, I will say, it will be APAC users. And what we need to add here is we need to add users in this group. So I'm going to add this security control user, and then I'm just going to save it. Now we have got this group, and under this group we have got one user which is added as an APAC user, which is security control. If again we go ahead and refresh this page, this time we know that share with is selected as public group. If we go here, we can see that we have got our group which is APAC user, and there are some internal groups that comes by default, all internals, all partners, and then customer portal users. Now here what we will say is we will say APAC records, and we will say share with APAC users. Okay, now here we are going to select based on criteria, and this time we will get region field. We will say if it is equals to our particular APAC over here and select this, and then we can just say here APAC user, and what is the access label we wanted, either read only or read write, so we can say read write. Before I go ahead and save this rule, one thing that I'd like to show here is if I can create any kind of any record here, I'm just putting some random values. We have not saved that sharing rules. Let's save this record. Okay, now if we go back to our object, which is this, if we get back to our object here and go to all, we are able to see two records over here. Let's check what we are able to see to how many records we are able to see as a security control user. We are only able to see one record which is owned by security control. Why? Because the OWD is private and there is no concept of sharing using role hierarchy, because we have removed the roles and we have not placed any kind of sharing rules as of now. Now what we will do is I'll just quickly save this. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. As soon as we will save this sharing rule, what will happen, it is going to perform a recalculation on that object. And what that recalculation will do is, if there are any matching records which they found, that will be shared with the particular shared group. Okay, here now we have got two which we have let me quickly add that field as well, which is called reason in the uh, list view, in our list view, so that we can see here. So we have got the reason which is saying APAC, right? And if we get back to our sharing rules and we try to edit this, we can see that even before editing, we were able to see that the criteria is saying that APAC. If we get back to our user and try to refresh this time we are able to see one more record which is saying that 1114 as in log number, and we are able to see the details. So that's how you get based on the criteria. Now even if you go ahead again and try to create one more here, I'm just trying to clone this record. I will clone this record here and then I'll again copy some values over here so that we can be sure that this is the correct record we are able to see here. I'm just going to save it. Now we have got one more record. Get back here, refresh this. Now we got one more record which is here, and we can see here, and let's try to delete this. Okay, we are getting the error. Why? Because we have given the permission for only editing and reading that record, and the rest operation cannot be performed on that record. So that is how criteria based sharing rule works. Now let's talk about owner based sharing rule. There is one more option right here. If I'm going to cancel here and click on new, we can see there is one more which is saying that owner based sharing rules. Now what can be the can be a very simple example for this. The example here is, now we have two users. One is saying APAC rules, right? Let's quickly assign this user some role here. I'm going to say customer support international. Okay, this is the role which is reporting to the role that is CEO. Now let's quickly get back to another user which is our admin user, and then assign some role to this user. I'm going to assign a role here, we say CEO. Now what will happen, if I am creating a user, none of other users will be able to see until unless there is a proper medium to share the record. That can be either sharing rules, manual sharing, or apex managed sharing, territories, that can be anything. But as of now in our org, there is only one sharing rule which says, or which shares the record based on a criteria. If the record for that is APAC, even let's quickly test it for any other reasons. We need to say so that, and we need to see for other region it is not working. So I'm just cloning this record and sending some putting some random values here. This time I will say EMEA. Save this, and this record will not be visible to that user even we have assigned the role. the role hierarchy is top to bottom, it will not work. And we can see that there are only 3 records. However, in our error logs, there are 4 records, but 1 record has been created but has not been shared. Now what happens, sometimes what happens, if a CEO or any user who is above on the role hierarchy, we wanted to share that record with some other users. How we can do that? For that, based on owner, because this time we know that the user who is having a role of CEO, if that user is creating a role, creating a record, we wanted to share that record with a particular user or a particular group or a particular role. So what we will do is, again we will create a new group over here, and we will say CEO, we will just say simple, we can say that, let's say that I'm say a simple role. And again I'm going to add one user over here, security control, and save it. Now we have got one here. This time what we will do is, we will keep this rule because this rule is sharing based on a criteria. This time we will say, and we will say CEO records, and we will say share CEO records with the below roles. And we can specify the role over here. We can say SVP. I'm just putting some random over here, or I can go to my user record, I copy this and then put here. Instead of below roles, I can say with this role. This time I'll say based on owner, record owner, I'll say it is role. Instead of public group, I'm saying it is role. And then I'm going to say CEO. If the owner role is CEO, then share it with a public group called simple roles, and then give only read only permission and save it. Now no matter what is the role of that, what is the not role, what is the value in that pick list we are selecting, that doesn't matter. Okay. And if we refresh this, as we know that as soon as we create a sharing rule, it does perform a recalculation. Now we have got 4 records. As of now we have got only 3 records. If we execute this, now we got the 4th record, because this record is matching the owner based criteria instead of having the record. Now if we get back here and try to create any other record over here, and we say here, I'm going to say owner based rule. I'm just selecting any reason. And now if I get back to my another user over here and say that I've got 5 records, which is saying that again NA. And even now we know that role hierarchy is in place. If I create any record from here, I can say any kind of, either it is MEA, and we can say that role hierarchy, and I save it. This record will automatically be visible to that user, because that user is having, we can say having the upper role, and that user is reporting to that role. So we will be able to see that role over here, that record over here. So that's how this particular, and that's how these roles work, these sharing rules work, that criteria based and owner based. And now if you again click on new over here, you can just see here you have got one guest user access. I'm going to show you over here. And if you go here, you can see, because this is based on criteria, there is no owner based criteria for guest user. You have to have provide a criteria for sharing your record with the guest user. This has come into the latest release, and that is due to some sort of data security that Salesforce is keeping in mind. Now you can just say here, or you can say log number uh, doesn't equal to null. It will never be null. And then you can share with, I have got these are the 4 profiles that I have. I can share with any of these profiles. I can select max fit, and then I can say read only. It is again going to be read only, no further permissions we can give to the guest user. And then I can say here guest user rule, and I can say share all the records. to guest user. And what is the need for sharing the records? Sometimes you might wanted to ask your user to have a to provide you a feedback, to provide the feedback for your service that they have taken, to provide the feedback for your sales representatives, or any case that they have raised, any concern that they have raised, and they wanted to provide the feedback. In that case, they need to have at least read only access for their case, where they can visit and then they can uh, access their case. So now we have got these three rules, which is one again for every single type of rules we have created over here. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.